Secretary reveals a successful first trip and visit there over the weekend. Panama's president said he will allow its participation in the Chinese Communist Party's it will no longer allow the participation in the Belt and Road Initiative. That participation will expire.
Yeah.
This is significant because Panama was the first Latin American nation to join Belt and Road and now becomes the first to back away from it because of President Trump. And to assist with the ongoing mass deportation effort, El Salvador's president has agreed to the most unprecedented migratory agreement anywhere in the world.
Jail. Listen to this.
Because President Trump is back in charge, El Salvador has offered for illegal aliens of any nationality facing deportation in the U.S. to be booked in his country's prison system. And finally, President Trump's envoy for special missions, Rick Grinnell, traveled to Venezuela and not only secured the release of 6 American hostages, but Venezuela also agreed to accept the return of illegal alien Tren de Aragua gang members. All of these incredible victories prove how well President Trump's peace through strength approach is working. And the days of weak American leadership are over. In another success story this week, efforts to seal the border, halt the invasion, and carry out the largest mass deportation campaign continue at lightning speed. Customs and Border Protection has approximately 79 miles of new border wall projects already underway in various stages of construction and planning. The first flights arrived to Guantanamo Bay yesterday afternoon out of El Paso.
Wow.
And who were some of the passengers aboard, you may ask?
Okay.
There were 10 members of the transnational gang Tren de Aragua on this flight.
Ooh.
And overall, our heroic ICE agents continue to prioritize the removal of violent, criminal, illegal aliens in communities across the country.
Gotta catch them all.
On February 3rd,
that's right,
ICE Dallas arrested a citizen of Nicaragua who has been convicted of sexual assault, strong arm, and lewd acts with a minor, and sentenced to 15 years in prison.
Wow.
ICE Los Angeles arrested a Mexican citizen who has been convicted of lewd acts with a minor, and sentenced to 364 days. And ICE Atlanta arrested a citizen of Mexico who has been convicted of homicide by vehicle and hit and run and sentenced to 6 months confinement. And ICE New York arrested a Venezuelan national and known TDA gang member who has a prior criminal conviction for assault in the 3rd degree, causing physical injury. Americans are safer every single time one of these criminals is arrested and deported from our country. On another important and ongoing topic, the Senate is working fast to confirm President Trump's exceptional cabinet nominees in the face of relentless media smear campaigns. As of right now, 12 members of the president's cabinet have been confirmed, most recently Pam Bondi, who, as you all know, I was just in the Oval Office for that swearing-in ceremony surrounded by Pam's lovely family.
Harris would have been better.
And we look forward to watching her serve as the Attorney General of the United States.
Maybe you're right.
According to CNN, President Trump is getting more cabinet picks confirmed so far than the average president in the modern era. Another success story. Yep. And we believe it's critical that Republicans in the Senate majority stay tough and keep their foot on the gas to confirm all of the remaining nominees as quickly as possible.
America's becoming Nazi America.
Important work here at the White House and across our entire federal government.
Deporting illegal immigrants
and
is
lastly,
Nazis.
Throughout his historic campaign, President Trump pledged to restore common sense to our country.
So true.
And he is continuing to deliver on that with an executive order that he will sign later today. The president will be signing an executive order keeping men out of women's sports to defend the safety of athletes, protect competitive integrity, and uphold the promise of Title IX. This common sense action from President Trump ends the disgusting betrayal of women and girls by the previous administration, who for years catered to radical activists who wanted biological males to be treated as women in workplace showers, competitive sports, prisons, and even rape shelters. Gender, ideology, insanity is over. Submissions from individuals across the country interested in participating in our new media seat at a future briefing continues to flood in. We are at more than 12,000 and counting. If you're watching right now and are interested, you can continue to apply on our new media website, whitehouse.gov/newmedia. And in the seat today, we have a long-time national television broadcaster. Many of you recognize her when she came in, Sage Steele, who is now the host of the incredibly successful podcast, The Sage Steele Show, on YouTube and all podcast platforms. And previously, Sage was a fixture at ESPN from 2007 to 2023. primarily hosting Sports Center, which we all know well. Before leaving the company to exercise her First Amendment rights more freely, we are honored to welcome her to the briefing room today. She will be joining the president at the big EO signing later this afternoon. I know many of you will be there as well. So, Sage,
when am I going to go to the White House?
Very exciting day for women and girls across the country.
Can I get a computer there?
Exciting. And Caroline, thank you for welcoming.
I don't know how much space they have.
Such a different background in this seat. It really does mean a lot. Thank you. Obviously, the House already passed the Protection of Women
Like a
and Girls
laptop?
Sports Act, which was a really big step for women and girls. So far, the Senate, as we know, has not brought it.
Come on.
We all know executive orders can be overturned, so I'm wondering how important it is to the president to get Congress to bring this, to pass legislation. So there are no instances like the past administration.
You gonna buy a house in Gaza?
Tried to destroy Title IX.
I don't.
It's incredibly
About
important
that.
that Congress immediately acts on this priority. I think the president is really setting the tone, making this a very immediate priority for this
Show Trump
administration,
Concord.
just as he promised to do on the campaign trail. And I'd like to get into the executive order a little bit
God.
today here at the White House and talk about what this executive action will actually do. So the executive order that the president will be signing later this afternoon, as I said, upholds the promise of Title IX. It also will require the DOJ to abide by the nationwide previous administration's illegal Title IX rewrite that would have dissolved single-sex spaces and opportunities.
Oh, jeez.
It also requires immediate action, including enforcement actions against schools and athletic associations comprised of schools that deny women single-sex sports in single-sex locker rooms. The executive order also calls for the convening of private sporting bodies in the White House. We want them to come to this campus so the president can hear in person the stories of female athletes who have suffered lifelong injuries, who have been silenced and forced to shower with men and compete with men on athletic fields across the country. Many of those women will be at the White House today. I encourage all of you in the media to actually talk to them to hear their stories. And I would also just add one more thing. This is a wildly popular position with the American people. In fact, there was a new poll recently that showed the overwhelming majority of Democrats also support keeping biological men out of women's sports. And so I know the president is very excited about the bill signing that will take place at 3 o'clock.
Don't believe retard Twitter radicals. They're not real.
So thank you very, very much. Garrett, great to see you here today.
Thank you.
Don't
On
believe
Gaza,
them.
the president has spent basically his entire public career criticizing foreign entanglements, nation building,
This is a
and the
good
American
question.
troops to fight abroad.
Yeah, true.
Particularly in the Middle East.
True.
This plan seems like it could ultimately involve all of those things.
Yeah.
Can you explain this reversal and how building
Why?
and owning Gaza squares with America First foreign policy?
I would reject the premise of your question that this forces the United States to be entangled in conflicts abroad.
I
The
think it
president has
does.
not
I think
committed
everybody
to putting
knows it
boots on
does.
the ground in Gaza. He has also said that the United States is not going to pay for the rebuilding of Gaza. His administration is going to work with our partners in the region to reconstruct this. Let me just take a step back here, because this is an out-of-the-box idea. That's who President Trump is. That's why the American people elected him. And his goal is lasting peace in the Middle East for all people in the region. And as I said in my opening remarks, we've had the same people pushing the same solutions to this problem for decades. And it's been made very clear to the president that the United States needs to be involved in this rebuilding effort to ensure stability in the region for all people. But that does not mean boots on the ground in Gaza. It does not mean American taxpayers will be funding this effort. It means Donald Trump, who is the best deal maker on the planet, is going to strike a deal with our partners in the region.
Yeah,
He
we'll
did
see
not rule
about
out
that.
American troops in Gaza last night. Are you doing that now?
I am saying that the president has not committed to that just yet. He has not made that commitment, and you know that.
And on the foreign partners, the Jordanians, the Egyptians, the Saudis have already panned this plan. What foreign partners, if any, have expressed any interest in being part of it?
Well, the president has said he's been socialing this idea for quite some time. He's been thinking about this.
Yeah.
He said in his remarks last night, this was not a decision or an announcement that he takes lightly. And the president has already spoken to the President El-Sisi. In fact, that was his first foreign leader call. He's meeting with the King of Jordan, King Abdullah, next week. He spoke with the King of Bahrain. He spoke with the Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia. And he has made it very clear, he's been very vocal, that he expects our partners in the region, particularly Egypt and Jordan, can accept Palestinian refugees temporarily so that we can rebuild their home. I'd like to show you some images of Gaza that were taken. Fox News aired this. I mean, that is, as they put it,
wow, look at that.
Apocalyptic scene in Gaza. This is an uninhabitable place for human beings. Do you really think that families can live their dream in a region that looks like this, with no running water, no
looks
electricity?
pretty bad.
And the special envoy to the president, Steve Witkoff, recently traveled to Gaza, as you all know, and he came back with images that he showed the president of the dire situation.
Y'all haven't been getting notification
and the president
for me?
made this decision
How many of y'all got
with
notification?
a humanitarian heart for all people in the region. Peter.
Thank you, Caroline. Are any officials here preparing to fight Democratic lawmakers in the streets?
Absolutely not.
So some
And
of these,
thanks for the question.
some
Fight 'em in
elected
the
Democrats are
streets?
so steamed about Doge. Congresswoman LaMonica McIver says we are at war. Ilhan Omar says we might actually see somebody get killed. And Chris Van Hollen says we have to fight this in the Congress. We have to fight this in the streets. So what now?
And may I just point out, if you heard that type
Sounds like
of
someone needs a
violent,
wellness check.
enticing rhetoric from our side of the aisle, from Republican leaders on Capitol Hill, I think there would be a lot more outrage in this country today. It's unacceptable, the comments that have been made by the Democrat leaders, and
Inciting
frankly,
violence,
they don't
of course.
even know what they're talking about. Because President Trump was elected with a mandate from the American people to make this government more efficient. He campaigned across this country with Elon Musk,
She's right.
vowing that
People
Elon
voted
was
for
going to
Elon
head up
doing
the
this.
Department of Government Efficiency, and the two of them, with a great team around them, were going to look at the receipts of this federal government and ensure it's accountable to American taxpayers. That's all that is happening here. And for Democrat officials to incite
No, they
violence
didn't.
and encourage Americans to
How many of y'all
take
who
to the
voted for
streets
Trump
is incredibly
voted for
alarming.
Elon to do this? How many of
Sounds
you
like
guys?
something that they're most concerned about is Doge engineers with access to Treasury systems. Can you clarify?
About that?
Do the Doge engineers have read-only access
Yes.
in these systems, so they are not allowed to write new
No.
code? They are not. Okay.
No.
And then one more thing. NBC is reporting that some of the illegal immigrants that we've seen rounded
Yeah.
up and arrested are not being deported. They're being released with ankle or wrist monitoring devices, or they have to check in on the phone. So is the administration arresting more people than you have room for?
I have seen the reports, and I'm glad you brought it up because we want to address it. There have been a total of 461 illegal aliens. This is of this morning when I got this information from DHS. That have been released from custody of the more than 8,000 that have been arrested since President Trump was inaugurated. It's less than 6%, and there are reasons for their release. Some of the factors include a lack of significant likelihood of removal in the foreseeable future, lack of detention availability, which is something this president and this administration has been incredibly vocal about. We are doing everything we can to deport and detain illegal immigrants, but we need Congress's help to increase funding for Border Patrol and for ICE to increase detention capability in our facilities. And then other serious medical conditions have also been the reasons for some of the release of these individuals. But none of them have final deportation orders. Many of them are probably contesting their immigration status. I'd refer you to DHS for more details, but I did get that information because I knew it would be a question, so thank you. Sure.
Yeah, sure, of course that makes sense.
The president and you here again today.
Send them to El Salvador?
Given the devastation, you think Palestinians have no choice but to leave Gaza and go elsewhere. But Palestinians say this is their home. They don't want to
Fucking
go.
Paul.
The president last night said he's willing to use the military if necessary. Is the U.S. prepared to remove Palestinians from Gaza by force?
The president
8K in 2 weeks is low?
Gaza
Yeah, I think
for
it is too.
Palestinians and all people in the region, peace-loving people who want real economic development and opportunity in the region. This is a region that has been controlled by Iranian-backed terrorists, Hamas, who have brutalized not just Israelis but Palestinians too. It is because of this Hamas that you see those images on that screen that Gaza has become a demolition site because Hamas launched that brutal attack on Israel on October the 7th. And so again, I would stress, President Trump wants to ensure that this can be a place where all people can live in peace. He is a peacemaker in chief. He made that very clear in his first term. And as for how that will be accomplished, the president
propped up
and
by
his team
Israel?
are talking with
I
our
thought they got
allies in the
voted
region,
for, like, a long
to
time
consider
ago.
next steps.
But should the American people be prepared to see U.S. military on the ground fighting a ground war against Hamas?
Again,
I
the
don't
president
know.
has not committed to U.S. troops in the region.
But it is an option.
I have said that the president has not committed to that yet. Sure.
If I could just follow up on that, though, why not rule out the idea of committing U.S. troops? This has been a long-standing argument that the president has made really over the last decade or so, talking about endless wars and not something the U.S. wants. Why not rule out troops?
Because I think the president is very good when he's making deals and negotiating not to rule out anything, because he wants to preserve that leverage in negotiations. And so I think that's what
Obviously, that's what he's
Well,
doing.
but not, though. He also said everyone loves this plan. He said that in the Oval Office.
Oh, everybody loves
In
it.
fact, the
Really?
Deputy Prime Minister of
He
Jordan
said that?
called it a declaration of war on the Arab people. So how does he square the fact that even some Republicans on the Hill are objecting to this or questioning this? How does he square the fact saying everyone loves this?
Well, King Abdullah of Jordan will be here next week, so I can provide you more context on the conversations he will have directly with the President of the United States after that meeting. And I would just point out
She's
that
ready
there's been
for
a
that
lot
one.
of leaders and officials all around the world who have doubted, I suppose, the deal-making ability of President Trump. You heard the Panama leader saying that he would not
Is it
agree
a
to
race
some
war?
of the concessions that
Not
he has
yet.
now made because of Secretary Rubio's visit.
No.
You had the Colombian president saying he wouldn't accept flights of Colombian illegal nationals who have entered into our country illegally, and those flights are underway. So actions speak louder than words. Dasha.
Caroline, you said the president has been working on this idea for a while behind the scenes now. Is there a written plan based on the president's proposal for Gaza? And if so, when was it drafted and who had a hand in that?
The plan was written in the president's remarks last night
just
as
made
he
it up.
revealed it to the world and to the American
So
people.
he just-
And his team are continuing to be engaged on this effort. I saw the National Security Advisor this morning. He has a very busy day of calls. And they will again continue to engage with our partners. That includes
Guess
Steve
what?
Witkoff as well. Mary.
Two questions.
Surprise, bitch!
So, how is today's executive order going to impact the 2028
He was
Summer
freeballing?
Olympics in Los
Yeah.
Angeles? For example, would a man who thinks that he's a transgender woman be allowed to compete as a female on U.S.
Oh,
soil?
man.
It's
Well,
a
obviously no,
very good
right?
question, and the president has actually mentioned this, that he does expect the Olympic Committee and the NCAA to no longer allow men to compete in women's sports. And I think the president, with the signing of his pen, starts a very public pressure campaign on these organizations to do the right thing
Yeah, he does.
for women and for girls across the country. Again, this is an incredibly
That's a
popular
fact.
position. There have been many notable female athletes who have had the courage to speak out against some very powerful institutions in this country. They deserve to have a voice and say. The president is bringing their voice to the highest level at the White House this afternoon, and he expects these organizations to comply with this federal executive order that he'll be signing today.
Thank you. And one more. On media coverage of this executive order and the topic in general, what's the White House's view of framing that calls men transgender females or similar rhetoric coming from organizations like the ACLU and GLAAD?
What?
Well, it's been very clear. The policy of this administration is that there are only two sexes, male and female. Pretty simple. Brian's on.
USAID has gotten a lot of attention the last couple of days.
Yeah.
Bizarre things that we've been, taxpayers have been.
That's about it.
Now it looks like there are a couple of media outlets that have been dragged into this conversation as far as USAID funding as well. Does the president have any comment on that?
So upon coming out here to the briefing room, I was made aware of the funding from USAID to media outlets, including Politico, who I know has a seat in this room. And I can confirm that the more than $8 million taxpayer dollars that have gone to essentially subsidizing subscriptions to Politico
What?
on the American taxpayers' dime will no longer be happening.
Wait.
The Doge team is working on canceling those.
That's real?
Again, this is a full government effort to ensure that
Oh my
we're going
God.
line by line when it comes to the federal government's
Bro.
books. And this president and his team are making decisions across the board on, do these receipts serve the interests of the American people?
These roaches are
Is
getting
this a good
snipped,
use
man.
of the American taxpayers' money? If it is not,
This is
that
bad.
funding will no longer be spent abroad, and American taxpayers will see significant savings because of that.
Oh, God.
I'd like to give some love to the back row. I've heard that unfortunately they haven't been called on in years past. So, Reagan, why don't you go?
Caroline,
The New York Times, too.
Announced that comedian Amber Brooks, who has called the president a toddler with his pants pulled down,
cares?
will be the entertainment for this year's Correspondents' Dinner. Does the White House have a reaction to this choice, and will the president be attending the dinner
It's
this
a
year?
joke.
certainly an interesting choice. I have the president's invitation
Gives a
on my
fuck.
desk. I have the invitation from myself on my desk as well. Haven't talked to the president about it. When he makes his decision, I will let you all know. But definitely an interesting choice of the comedian. I'll talk to the boss about it and see what we decide. Sure, go ahead. Yes, yes.
On the executive order
Let's
that
make
was
it
signed
count.
today, you said that this will be enforced. Can you spell out for the public how exactly the administration plans to enforce it at the local level?
Nope.
That there aren't any rights groups to say that this
I think kids have already been exposed to discrimination, especially young women and girls who have been forced to shower in locker rooms with biological men, who have been forced to compete on playing fields with biological men, which is incredibly unfair and unsafe, and again, an incredibly unpopular policy